Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Jarrell Mason, better known as Jay Mason. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Album Cover, where we get inside the entertainment industry with those in the know and give them their flowers to be celebrated. With me right now, I have a gentleman who's originally from Sumter, South Carolina, made his way onto the music scene in the late 90s, early 2000s as a part of the teen pop sensation, No Authority. So we're going to talk about 90s, 2000s teen pop, music in general, all that and then some with the one and only Mr. Tommy Mack, aka Tommy McCarthy. Tommy, thank you for coming on Beyond the Album Cover, sir.
Appreciate you, Jarrell. I'm excited that you reached out to me. I looked and was looking at some of your episodes, and just saw a bunch of old friends of mine, and realized it was a small world. Clearly, we run in similar circles and have a lot of the same friends and influencers. Because a lot of my friends now, fortunately, um, have influenced me musically, and I've been super blessed to work with people that I grew up listening to, and so just watching, seeing who your guests have been on your podcast, I said, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna hop on with him. We're gonna have some fun. So I'm looking forward to what we've got in store today.
Yeah, for sure. And I mentioned at the top you're originally from Sumter, South Carolina. Did you cut your
That's right.
teeth singing in the choir anywhere you could in high school and everything before linking up and becoming a member of No Authority?
So I actually, I grew up playing drums in church. So I played, it was at the Church of God Pentecostal church. So I played drums in church, and used to throw in some of those little Timberland beats from time to time. No one said anything. In fact, I could see that the Holy Ghost was moving even more when I would put the Timberland in there. So hey, it was good. You got to have good music in the church. Otherwise, people get sleepy. I've been to many churches, and sometimes you're up in there and you're looking around, trying to read the psalm, read something, read the offering slip, trying to keep you awake. I guarantee you, in the Pentecostal church I grew up in, that wasn't that much of a problem. It was always entertaining. So I played drums in church. Um, Singing, I did sing a little bit in church, but in high school, I played a lot of sports. So I played football, basketball, soccer. I was in the marching band. Now, I think I played. Do you ever play foot? Do you ever play sports in high school?
Yeah, I played football.
Okay, so I started. I thought I was going to play football in was it seventh or eighth grade. I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be fun, and I'm out there. I'm practicing, and one of my buddies, actually, I think he was our ended up being the quarterback for the team. We're on break. We're having a sip of water, and he just comes behind me and smashes me, sandwiches me, folds me over, knocks the wind out of me. I'm laying there like, oh, like, no, I don't think this is for me. So I actually said, I'm done. I was done with football. I went and joined band, right? Because it was a lot safer. And so I did that all the way up until my senior year, when I ended up going back to football. But uh, all that to say this: when you're on the bus going to games, whether you're on the sports team, whether you're in the marching band, whatever, a lot of times it's a long ride, especially, out down south. It's a long way to the next high school, right?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of time to do stuff, and most of that, you're either sleeping, talking, or singing. And what I found out over the time in high school was the cheerleaders would love when you would sing on the bus. I'm like, okay, all right, interesting, right? So I started singing a little bit, and I did. One year I was in choir in high school too, but really, honestly, I didn't start seriously singing, until I was up into the later years in high school, and then, I moved to LA when I was 18, and ended up going to a karaoke place in Burbank. Not Dimples, although Dimples did come later. Are you familiar with Dimples in Burbank,
No.
California? It's a story for another time. But to answer your question, I never really seriously studied it until later in high school,
Mhm.
because I found out the cheerleaders liked it. So
Right.
that was kind of yeah. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah, like Eddie Murphy said in Raw, singers get all the you know what's, and when the ladies come to you, if you got two left feet, if you could hold a note, you were good money. And of course, this was right around the era when Nuki's on the Block, Boys to Men, Jodeci, Boys to Men, Shy, Color Me Bad,
Oh
High
yeah.
Five, Riff,
Mhm.
Today. All of that was really popping and really going. And you could really tell when you listen to, a lot of those acts, heavy R&B influence. I don't know if you saw this video on YouTube. It was from MMC. It was like around 93. It was JC, Justin, Ryan Gosling, and Dale Goldberg, who later went on to be on
Yeah.
Shasta McNasty on UPN. They were
Yeah.
doing Jodeci Cry
Yeah.
For You. And I'm like, oh, somebody was listening to somebody's urban station when they said, oh, let's put Jodeci on Disney.
And now, yes, and yeah, I know all the guys you're talking about, and yeah, all of them. And I know the video you're talking about too. And it's funny because you see the little moves with the
With the hand
hands.
motions.
Oh, yeah, that video cracks me up, man. But look, that's the '90s. That's that was the Mickey Mouse Club version, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a pretty good, it was a reasonable facsimile. We'll put it that way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was
It
like,
was good.
imagine if they heard Knocking the Boots or Freak Me.
I don't think that will make it on MMC though.
No,
I don't
no,
think
it
that
probably
would.
would have been Let Me Hug You Up and Down or something family friendly. That was
Yeah.
like that. But who were some of your musical influences growing up? Were you bumping, like Shy Guy, Jodeci, New Edition, True?
Um, Shy. Yeah, absolutely. New Edition. A little bit. I think one of the first CDs I bought was actually Bobby Brown. It was a solo record. After New Edition. Honestly, I think my first group love was New Kids.
Mm-hmm.
Was a huge New Kids fan. Went to go see them um, in, where was it, North Carolina, in Charlotte, up at Carowinds. Saw them
Mm-hmm.
in Carowinds. Saw them in Columbia, South Carolina, a couple times, and just really looked up to those guys. Bought all the magazines, the videos, everything, and so it was weird later on in life when I had the magazines out and in the. Anyway, let me go back. New Kids, I would say. Boys to Men, absolutely. As Yet, and then I also listened to some Tupac, some Crucial Conflict, some Do or Die, some Bone Thugs. Like, I had a nice mix. So if you listen, I don't know if you had I have a solo album out after the group broke up years later. There was a bunch of stuff that I had written with the intention of it being No Authority stuff that we never ended up doing. But there are some tracks on there that I do rap and do. There's a little bit of Bone Thug influence. In fact, the single "Can I Get Your Number,"
Mm-hmm.
which I assume you've heard it, or there's a single, the video for it and everything. We did a remix. Me and my boy Richie Harris. So Lazy Bone was actually in the studio with him doing his new album. This is probably early 2000,
Mm-hmm.
early 2000. And Can I Get Your Number was still on the radio. It was on all the top 40 pop stations. And I said, let's try to cross this over. And Richie said, look, we'll get Lazy Bone on it. We'll get it on the beat. We'll get it on power. We'll get, so try to cross it over, right, to rhythm radio.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lazy goes in and he does his part. And I'm like, Rich, I want to rap with Lazy. I grew up listening to Bone Thugs. I want to, like, this is going to be cool to show my friends back home in Sumter, right? That was kind of where my head was, that I want to show this off. I want to, it'll be cool. Richie said, Tommy, you're not going to rap with Lazy. I said, listen, man. He said, you go in there, and if it's cool, you can keep, 8 bars, 16 bars. If it's not, then you're not doing it. I said, okay. So I went in and I did my bit, and he was like, all right, give me 30 minutes. Let me rearrange the track. So he ended up putting my rap in there. So I got to rap with Lazy Bone on that remix. And not a lot of people have heard that. It was never released. So Can I Get Your Number has an official remix with Lazy Bone. But at the time that was going down, we were on MJJ, still at Sony.
Mhm.
And I went to the A&R and I said, "Hey, here's this remix with Lazy Bone. We can keep the airplay going on top 40 and cross it over to rhythm radio."
Mhm.
And the A&R there at NJJ at Sony said, "Hip hop and pop, that'll never work. That'll never work." And so what do I say? I'm a kid. I'm a 18, 19-year-old kid at the time. Like, all right, well, thanks for listening. Right now, fortunately and unfortunately, I don't know exactly whether it was or not, but we got bought by Maverick, Warner Brothers, right?
Mhm.
So we moved over to Maverick. That means we have a new A&R, a new ear, right? So
Mhm.
now I take that remix and I play it for them. They say the same thing. Hip hop and pop will never cross over. That'll never work. Guess what happened? About 2 weeks later, NSYNC and Nelly released Girlfriend. And I was just like,
You were right
we could
there.
have been we could have been pioneers.
Yeah,
We could have done it first.
you guys were right there, and I want to circle back to New Kids because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people don't know that the origins of New Kids that they were put together and assembled to win over the R&B market. I had a chance to interview both Danny Wood and Maurice Starr. Maurice, who helped guide New Edition with Candy Girl after their split, said, "I'm gonna take what was successful with New Edition, apply it to this." And of course, originally they were R&B group. The 1986 album didn't fare well, and they were about to get dropped from Columbia until a pop station inadvertently started playing "Please Don't Go Girl" because it was only getting marketed towards R&B. And they did a version of the video that aired only on BET or urban shows. And once that scored pop radio approval, the record labels were calling and saying, "Hey, we want more stuff," and that was when the whole pop machine went into overdrive with them. But they never lost their R&B core.
Yeah. And what was it? It was Nine Nook, or what was
Yeah, Nine Nook was
NYNUK?
the original name, and then there was a cut on the album called "Nuke is on the Block," and I think it was Larkin Arnold who was over Columbia CBS at the time, told them like, "Hey, switch the name to New Kids," and then they just took off like a rocket after "Please Don't Go Girls" started gaining approval, and once they linked up with Tiffany on that tour, that was when the tide started
Hmm.
to turn for them.
Yeah, that was in fact, I think that was the tour that I saw at Carowinds, was where Tiffany opened for them. Lots of stories about that tour, obviously,
Wow.
but yeah, Maurice Starr was brilliant. Is brilliant. And do you remember was it his sons or his
It was
nephews?
his son. They
Uh,
were in the group Perfect
Rated
Gentleman.
PG. Perfect
Perfect
Gentleman.
Gentleman.
Rated PG. Perfect Gentleman.
Hmm.
Rings around the moon. You got me seeing rings around the moon. Remember that one?
Yeah, I remember that Perfect Gentleman, but I think the one
Yeah.
teen idol from the 90s that doesn't get mentioned enough in his solo album, I think laid the template for what Justin were to come out with Justified, was Jeremy Jordan.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. For some reason in my head, I was thinking you were say Tevin Campbell, just based on the music. But
Yeah.
yeah, Jeremy Jordan. Okay, I can see that. So did you do you have? I don't know a lot about his early experience. Jeremy Jordan, was
Yeah.
he in a group before?
Nah, he was
He was an
solo.
actor
Yeah,
or something,
actor
right?
solo because he was on 90210, and The Right Kind of
Mm,
Love was featured on 90210. That was written by
mm.
Robbie Neville. And I think that was
Okay.
originally supposed to go for Color Me Bad, but they ended up passing, and Jeremy ended up cutting it. But his solo album, great album. Robbie Neville's on there. You got some Kyle West, I'll Be Sure production on there. Definitely R&B, pop, sprinkled, mixed in. Great album. The
Okay.
Time I Love Jeremy
Okay.
Jordan came out around 93. And then on that same album, he had a record called Wanna Girl, which was a dope record, but it was originally cut by Trey Lorenz. Trey Lorenz, who's Mariah Carey's backup singer,
Yep.
who's also
Yep.
originally a South Carolina native from Florence.
Oh, it was in Florence. I didn't know that. Yeah, Trey Lorenz. He was now Mariah Carey was probably the second or third CD that I bought. I'm definitely aging myself, right? By
Mhm.
saying the third CD that I bought. But and that had "I'll Be There" with Trey Lorenz,
Mm.
where he hits that crazy high note.
Yeah.
Then,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
holding on, and it was
Mm.
almost whistling
Yeah.
like Mariah, right?
The
Trey
whistling
Lorenz can
register.
sing, man.
Trey Lorenz can sing his butt off. Now, with you coming in No Authority, I think this was right around the time when Josh Keaton, original member, had left
Yeah.
and they had put out Keep On, and
Mhm.
Girlfriend was booming and buzzing at the time because it was on the Trippin' soundtrack. And then
Yep.
was it where they had an open call to look for another member, or was it where you referred to come into the group? How did that come about with you coming into the group?
So it was actually an interesting story. A buddy of mine that so when I moved to LA, I just kind of went right into the phone book and started looking up studios,
Hmm.
right? Back when phone books were a thing. I would just flip through, find studios, boom, boom, boom. Anyway, after a lot of work, a lot of cold calling, I ended up interning at Stevie B's studio. If you remember Stevie B,
Of course.
I want to be the one you're kissing and or because I
The
love
Postman
you.
song.
Right. Postman song, right? Got your letter. Of course. So I worked with Stevie for a while. And while I was doing that, I would do extra work on movies, on TV shows, and met a lot of great friends that I still have to this day doing that. But in doing that, I met a couple of twins, these two guys, Bruce and Seth Hall. Well, they were going to USC, and I would go visit them on campus, and we'd kind of jam with the guitar or whatever and sing. And anyway, I was back home visiting my mom, my family in South Carolina for Christmas, I think, one year. And um, Bruce calls and says, "Hey, I auditioned for this thing, and I wasn't right for it, but I think you'd be good for it. You should check it out." I said, "Okay." So here's the number. Call and ask for Star or ask for Richard or whatever. Okay. So I said, "Well, I'm flying back on this day. I can come in and meet." Now, at the time, I had a group together called Full House. Um, and it was essentially it was three um, darker individuals and two lighter individuals. So Full House,
Hmm.
right? Like in a hand of poker hand. And so we called ourselves Full House. And I got to tell you, man, I've heard Boys to Men sing live. I've heard a lot of people sing live and like in the room hearing them harmonize. I was by far the weakest link in this group. I mean, I don't think I've ever been a part of something so just pristine with these guys. This five part, and so part of me was thinking, I don't want to go do this because I've got these guys, and we actually are in talks with Motown about a deal for this group. And anyway, they said, hey, take the meeting, right? They were just like, hey, just go, go see what's up. I said, okay. So I flew back to LA. I get there. I've got my outfit picked out. And back then it was like bright orange and bright green and bright right. So I got this flashy outfit. I'm going to go in there, and uh, the air the airline lost my luggage. So now I'm back, and I'm now staying with a buddy of mine in North Hollywood, trying to figure out okay what I do. And we went to the mall, and he's like, okay, wear this, wear this. And so we picked out an outfit, and I took that outfit in there. And first thing they said when she said, okay, well, what can you sing? I was like, yeah, what do you want to hear? I forget what I sang. She said, can you dance? I was like, sure. So she played something, and I danced a little bit. She's like, okay, show me your abs. And I had to pull up my shirt and show her I know, right? Cringy, right? I saw your face. Now, nowadays,
That would be considered
that would
inappropriate.
people would be like, what? But I mean, that was part of the gig then, right? It's like, wait, well, I guess I've got. To be able to flash something.
Hmm.
I wish I still had those abs. Got more of a 12 pack than a 6 pack now, but um, you know how that goes.
Yeah, yeah.
But but so yeah, went in there, sang, danced, showed the abs, and she said, "Okay, come back tomorrow. You're gonna meet, Richard." And so I came out the next day, and Richard said, "Hey, yeah, sound great. We like, your look, your sound. You can dance, you can move. We'll let you know." Okay, so a little time goes by, and it's funny. I've told this story a lot. I don't think I've ever told it to anyone on a podcast. I don't think it's ever been recorded. So it's interesting. You're getting an exclusive here, Jarrell.
Mhm.
Exclusive, world exclusive,
Exclusive.
exclusive, world exclusive. So a few weeks go by, and I'm still with the other group, right? And I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess that just blew over. Nothing's going to happen with this no authority thing. And so we're still pursuing our stuff and rehearsing and everything. And then finally get a call, hey, can you come in? Okay. I said, well, you know what? I'm with this group and I'd like you to meet these guys. He said, okay, well, bring them in. Bring them in. We'll meet, whatever. So I wanted to bring my full house group in, right?
Right.
So yeah, come in tomorrow, 2 o'clock, whatever it was. So I show up and I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, the other guys should be here. I don't know where they're at. And this is before you could easily, not everyone had cell phones. It wasn't like you could just be like, hey, we at, right? So I'm waiting, and the guys weren't. They just didn't. They weren't showing up. I'm like, what's going on? He said, well, the no authority guys will be here soon. I was like, well, what do you mean? So what turns out what happened was he, I guess, had canceled the meeting for the other guys from my other group.
Mhm.
So I was the only one to show up,
Oh, it was like a
and
sneak way of him telling you that you're in.
and he had no authority come in to meet me. So they came in, and I remember when we first met. I think Ricky thought that I was just like some European producer or something that was coming in to work with them. I don't know. It was weird, man. But I was like, yeah, I met the guys, and I was like, these guys are pretty cool. And so I got a hold of my group after and my other group after and said, look, this is what's going on. They want me to sign with them. Um, what do you think? And they said, look, they're in magazines. They already have an album out. Go do that. And so they were behind it 100%. And with their blessing, I went on and did it. And I signed a contract that the guys signed when they were probably 11, 12 years old. So being an adult in LA, not living with my parents, it wasn't the most exciting contract to sign.
Mhm.
But sometimes you have to, take a chance, take a step. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying that it was a good contract by any means, but it opened a door. And sometimes you have to open doors knowing that once you get that step in, you can take another step, right?
Right.
It's not always about the immediate return.
Mhm.
So that is the story of how I joined. It literally was from this guy Bruce Hall, who I mentioned his name because years later, this is pretty crazy. Are you familiar with the Hollywood Knights, the basketball team? It's a charity basketball team that plays at high schools all around the LA area.
Vaguely. Vaguely.
Okay, so Michael Mirish, uh, rest his soul, he passed this past year, but he was a great guy, and his father started it um, decades ago. Back, he had like the Fresh Prince, he had Will Smith on there, he had all kind. I mean, back in the day, all the stars were playing on it. In fact, Alfonso Ribeiro was still playing when I was playing, but we're playing on this charity basketball team, right? We're going to different high schools, and um, I see Bruce, and I'm like, Bruce, what are you doing? Because he's on the team. I'm like, what's been going on? What are you doing? He's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm in that group, the group that you told me about. So he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's this is no authority. This is the guys. I said, what are you doing here? He said, I'm in a show called Passions. I was like, oh, cool, man. So it turned out he went on to act. I guess his brother Seth went on to graduate USC and become a doctor, but he became an actor, and we met randomly, um, just by happenstance. Neither one of us knew what we were up to, and we saw each other playing on the same team at the basketball game, and he found out that I joined the group that he told me about. It was
Mhm.
pretty crazy, pretty
Wow.
fun story.
Crazy
Yeah.
story. So, what was it like for you coming in and you guys are going in the studio to cut the sophomore album, knowing, like you mentioned earlier, going from MJJ to Maverick, which was
Mhm.
Madonna's label, and then this is right around the time when, of course, the teen pop phenomenon was at its peak with Backstreet, NSYNC, 98 Degrees, Britney. Christina. So what
Mhm.
was it like for you coming in and going through that whole process of cutting that sophomore album when the whole boy band phenomenon TRL was in full tilt?
Uh, It was a lot of fun, a lot of fun, and I remember a lot of just being in the studio. Uh, well, we worked out of a bunch of different studios in the LA area, um, and I remember just the food. We'd order food like we were all so excited when it was lunchtime because you could pick, you know, was it the Formosa Cafe? Whatever restaurants were around, we just get let me get the burrito and just have the most delicious food. We were always so excited about lunch. But the thing is, after lunch, if you had something with cheese in it, your vocal's not going to be the same. So you always had to worry about, okay, who's got to sing their part after lunch. Um, Now, are you a vocalist as well?
Closet.
Okay, okay, okay. But if you eat something dairy or something cheese, your vocal is going to be a little different, right?
Hmm.
You might have to come back and have something acidic or something to cut that, or if you're looking for that rasp, maybe a shot of whiskey or something to get some of that real, raspy.
Hmm.
So a lot of it has to do with what you're eating, drinking. Um, so anyway, that was a long way around for me to say that we really enjoyed recording the album and working with the different producers and songwriters. It was a very heavily European influence on the second album, which is strange. Uh, it was backwards from what, for example, In Sync did. Right, I think the first album was super, super pop, super Euro pop.
Hmm.
Then they started getting a little more R&B, whereas we started with Rodney Jerkins producing the whole first album, right? So, and I always say the funny thing is, a lot of times someone's first album is self-titled,
Hmm.
right? So if No Authority, self-titled No Authority, the pop album had come out first, and then the R&B album had come out second. The R&B album being called Keep On, which is a very fitting second album name, that would have been more along the lines of what radio was looking to play at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. So you went inverse where the sophomore
Yeah,
album should have been the debut and the debut should have been the sophomore.
it seems like it, right? I mean, musically, that would have
Yeah.
made more sense.
Yeah, because that second album, I loved. I banged the mess out of it. Please Don't Break My Heart. Dope record. Girlfriend, like I mentioned, was on the Trippin' soundtrack. Cult classic. Look it up.
Well,
Dope,
that
dope
was the
record.
first album.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That was on the first album. You mentioned Europe, and a lot of people, I think, unless you really know, the whole Sharon Studio sound out in Sweden with
Hmm.
Max Martin, Dennis Pop, Herbie
Hmm.
Kreislow, who I had a chance to interview as well, and
Oh,
how,
you had Herbie on.
yeah, I had Herbie in their work, with Ace of Base and Robin, and of course, early Backstreet Boys, early NSYNC, and 3T, who I still feel to this day should have translated their European success here because that Brotherhood album, outstanding, and how they had to go to Europe first to cut their teeth
Yeah,
before breaking back
yeah,
stateside because it wasn't until Hanson and Spice Girls opened the door for pop to be cool again in the US
yeah.
because it was right around during grunge, gangster rap. But of course, in Europe, you had Take That, Boyzone, Westlife,
Mhm.
E17, Five, Eternal, Pop Bros. Pop was really booming over there.
Oh yeah, the three T. So they were on MJJ with us actually then, when we were there. I think it was us, 3T, Tatiana Ali, a few other groups, but yeah, 3T. Man, I would do anything, girl, anything for you. They had that little Michael vibrato on
Hmm.
them.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were cool.
Yeah, my favorite cut off of the Brotherhood album was Sexual Attention. It was written by Damon Thomas, who was the Underdogs, and a pre-famous Robin Thicke.
Pre-fame Robin Thicke. Okay,
Yeah,
okay. He
because it
was
was
just
right.
cutting his teeth.
Yeah, it was cutting his teeth because I think he had did some stuff on Brandy's debut, 3T, and then he came out, I believe, was in 2000, 2001 with When I Get You Alone on New America. This is when he went by Thick at the time,
Right,
when he had the long
right.
hair. Then, of course, he did the rebranding and came out as Robin Thicke.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, a lot of people don't know he was writing a lot well before he came out as an artist. So Herbie Critchlow, you were talking about. Herbie, we worked with Herbie on the No Authority album, on the second album. He did a couple songs on there. We worked with Red One as well. I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
talked to Red One, but we uh, we had some pretty amazing European producers. Cut Father and Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, if you listen to the album, it's definitely it's Mr. Mig. Mr. Mig had "Can I Get Your Number" plus three other cuts on there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are literally two songs on there that you can practically sing along to two Backstreet Boys songs. I'm not going to give them away
Right.
exactly, but
Mm-hmm.
when something is a success,
Mm-hmm.
people tend to want to emulate that,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of harkens back to what I said with the A&R, not wanting to lose their job, just wanting to keep their high paying job, not wanting to create and become a pioneer. They just said, look, that'll never work. Then somebody else does it. Next thing you know, now the next A&R is going to say, okay, now let's do this. But if it's not working yet, a lot of people play it safe,
Right.
or they'll just, you want to copy what works. And that comes down to sampling too, right? Think
Mm-hmm.
about, some of the biggest hit. Think about every single song on Diddy's album a couple of decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was a sample.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Everything was a sample.
Now, with you guys cutting the sophomore album, and like I mentioned, Backstreet Boys in sync, was it hard for you to
Mhm.
tell the label like, "Hey, we want our own sound. We just don't want to copy Backstreet and in sync. We love what they do, but we know we're a different group."
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to tell them that because you can't, right? We were called No Authority, but in reality, we had no authority at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were just a bunch of kids trying to do the best that we could with what they were allowing us to do. Now, Ricky and I did go and write and submit a bunch of songs. We did end up getting one song that we wrote on the album called "Thinking." It was just an album cut. It never was a single, obviously, but a lot of people really like that song. I don't know if you've heard that one. I
Yeah.
forget what track number it is, but I've been thinking about you, baby. Are you thinking of me too? It was
Mm-hmm.
a kind of a real smooth kind of
Mm-hmm.
mid
Right.
tempo, kind of more R&B cut. But
Mm-hmm.
at that stage, it's really hard to take control as a group, right? Because we hadn't had that critical success where we were able to have that voice.
Right.
And so at that time, that wasn't really an option. I don't want to skip too far ahead because I don't know where you're going yet, but we can circle back on that having no authority at the time up
Yeah.
until where we are now.
Yeah, and I
But
want to piggyback off of that. Just
mhm.
being in the boy group, did you feel musically and creatively constricted, knowing that okay, they're gonna give us a bunch of producers, a bunch of songwriters, canned songs, and not really let us grow and be independent as an artist to where you can kind of sort of make that same transition almost like how New Edition was able to do after the Awful Love album and Heartbreak when Johnny came in, where they were able to say, look, we're not kids anymore. We're going to have the
Mhm.
look, the sound, and the songs reflect the maturity. And do you feel being in a group like that, you sacrifice some of that for the sake of chasing the dollar?
Well, what do you think?
I say so. I say yes.
Yeah,
Because like I mentioned to you before we started, I wanted to be in the boy group really
yeah,
bad because of the screaming
yeah,
girls, but kind of
yeah,
looking at it, you can't sing ooh baby baby when you're 21, 22. I gotta have some bite, some maturity. That can only
yeah.
work for so long. And you got to be able to grow and mature as you age. And it seems like being in the boy band environment, they want you to stay forever young, which is why in
Yeah.
Menudo you get replaced at 16.
In Menudo, you are forever young if you're in Menudo. Otherwise, you're just not a Menudo, right? Now
Right.
with No Authority and other groups like NSYNC and Backstreet, uh, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my boys, All for One,
Oh
who
yeah,
have
for sure.
never stopped. I think they might be the longest running group that has just never stopped touring with the original all four original members.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Somebody call Guinness and find out. But they are super talented cats. And yes, to answer your question, uh, it, it was tough because you didn't have much of a voice, right? And I know that with No Authority, especially, our whole quote unquote vibe or whatever was, oh well, we have no authority, we pick our own clothes and we do what we want to do, and we didn't, right? We didn't. That was the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we well, I don't know how much longer are we going, because I don't want to jump ahead too far
Oh,
and ruin
oh,
this
we're
little
oh
this surprise.
we're going as long as you want. So feel free to go all around and then some.
Okay,
So
I just want to make sure we're hitting everything you want to hit first before, because I've got a fun little cherry on top that I'd like to put, that's going to cap off kind of the storyline that we're on here. So,
oh yeah, please
um,
continue.
okay, all right. So, fast forward years later, here we are, and um, well, I guess I should tell you the moment that we knew that the group was no longer going to be on a label.
Mm-hmm.
It was Christmas time, and they called us into the office and said, "Okay, guys, you've been touring. We've been touring for the past 8 months with the Nickelodeon tour. We had done a bunch of radio stuff. We got program directors asking for I'm telling you this, which was supposed to be the next single, right? And I'm telling you this was the mid ballad. It's kind of like the I want it that it's the I want it that way, right? The mid ballad that really breaks the boy band. It's the one that is right
Mm-hmm.
there. I'm telling you this from the Rugrats in Paris soundtrack. It was on the soundtrack. Um, so there were a bunch of CDs burned, as you would do back in the day. They would burn the CDs. They would send them to the radio stations. Well, they called us in and they said, "Hey guys, here's some Christmas presents. If you want to give these to your friends and family." And it was the boxes of the promo CDs for I'm telling you this. Yeah, ugly face for sure. We were like, okay, that's not a good sign, right? So that was kind of the begin where we knew it was the beginning of the end, right? So we took all these promo CDs, and I think I've still got a couple boxes somewhere, but those all they needed was a postage stamp, and the PDs would have been playing these things, would have been playing that single. That's the one that gets you over the hump.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, that didn't happen. So we did a few more shows with all four of us, and then one show, Danny didn't show up. It's kind of a crazy story. He went on. He was getting into acting. He changed his name to Danny Tavis instead of Zavasky Tavis or something like that. He just didn't show up for a show at one point at the. This was actually a smaller show, I think, at the Key Club in on Sunset in Hollywood, and we literally had to re-choreograph everything for three people in like 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So we recorded, we did the show. And we're like, okay, well, I guess we can do this with three people. So we played a few more shows, and then we played the state fair. I want to say somewhere in Michigan or something, but we knew that was our last show. And,
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely very, very sad for us. And we couldn't really tell people, they say, "Hey, where's Danny?" "Oh, he's surfing," or whatever. Right. What do you say?
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, doing, finishing the last song and taking that bow, thinking, "Man, this was a lot of fun. This was a cool run,"
Mm-hmm.
but we all kind of knew that was it.
Right.
And so then years go by, we all kind of go our different ways and do different things. And for a long time, I was really trying to get No Authority back together and everybody was doing it, right? Everybody's back together. I mean, you've got LFO with just Brad,
Mm-hmm.
who's touring, and you got O Town and those guys coming in to help him with LFO songs and stuff. It's like everybody's doing this thing. We got like, guys, we got to do this. And for some reason, there was some beef between a couple guys for a long time, and I was beating my head against the wall trying to make this thing happen
Right.
year after year after year. And then finally, this past year, I said, for my mental health, I got to let this thing go. I just,
Right.
I can't. I can't, I've just got to let it go. So I finally, you know, I said, okay, I'm done. Like I can't, I'm not going to try to make that happen anymore. And lo and behold, Ricky texts me and it's like, hey, here's this, Pop 2K thing. We should be on this. I'm like, yeah, I know. I agree. He's like, well, can you talk to Eric? I said, well, I've had this conversation many times, but yeah, sure. I'll talk to Eric and talk to Eric. I was like, yeah, Jeff Timmons is on that and he's promoting this and that. And Eric said, Tommy, I've thought about it. I've kind of had a change of heart. I think I want to do this. She's like, what? I'm like, literally, right when I let it go,
Hmm.
now here it comes back.
Hmm.
Right? Isn't that
Right.
crazy how
Yeah.
that works? Decades. And
Right.
you let something go. And they say if you let it go and it comes back,
Hmm.
then it's yours and it's love. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. And the cool thing is that we actually had a feature in People magazine in July that was talking about the reunion. It actually had my I was able to get my wife featured in there. She's signed to a label this past year, so she's doing her stuff. I'm helping, with her producing her stuff. But yeah, we were talking about no authority stuff on there, and one thing led to another, and somehow our old management or label, whatever, um, let the rights slip to no authority. So we now have all the authority with the name no authority. So we now officially, no one has authority over that except for us. We own it. So we're pretty excited about that. For merchandise, for the name, for touring, for everything, we now own no authority. So I'm pretty
Hey,
stoked about it.
congrats to you guys for that. And hey,
Thank you.
hopefully, like all you guys, we can have a party with everybody. Now, I want
Yeah.
to ask, with you guys being on Maverick, was Cleopatra on Maverick with you all at the time?
Cleopatra.
They were
Yes,
a
yes,
girl
yes,
group
yes.
out of the UK, Three Sisters.
Cleopatra,
Cleopatra coming
Cleopatra
at you.
coming at you, coming at you. Yep, I remember them absolutely, and I think we did a couple of shows with them actually. I believe we
Yeah,
did. I believe we did.
yeah, yeah. They were definitely dope. But seeing how like MTV and Disney, of course, was really the two engines that drove the teen pop phenomenon to high heights. Because when I interviewed Donna
Yeah.
Wright, she said originally Backstreet Boys were supposed to do Disney, but they felt,
Mhm.
hey, we're too old. And I guess someone at Disney was about to get the axe, and it didn't find a replacement, and that's how NSYNC got that, and then that's what led to them shooting up the superstar status here in the states.
I've got a really fun story to tell you about that. Can I take 1 second though? I've got to
Yes,
run.
yes,
Give me
yes,
just
yes.
one
Please.
second. So with Disney, we did a handful of specials with them, I think, but that was through more than 98 Degrees thing. Nickelodeon is mostly what we did. The Nickelodeon All That Music and More tour with Keenan, Kel, Amanda, Nick Cannon, all those guys, and that was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Mhm.
But the story, because you were mentioning Donna Wright and with NSYNC and Backstreet and that whole thing with the Disney stuff with them, there's a pretty funny story, and I think that if we bring the guys on for like a part two of this, they'll tell it way better. But there was essentially a point where there was a meeting in a hotel room with the guys in No Authority before I joined. They went and sang for someone, and they said, "We really love you guys." And then the girl, the lady that was with them, said, "Oh yeah, they're my favorite. They're my favorite." Um, they ended up going with the other group, and that group was Backstreet Boys.
Ah,
Yeah. So No Authority. It was a Backstreet or NSYNC. Like I said, I'm gonna have to have them tell it, but it was one of the two. But they were meeting and singing, trying to get signed. This is before they were signed with MJJ. They were trying to get a deal, and it was between No Authority and it was either back. It had to be. It had to have been Backstreet, I guess, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'll let them tell it. They tell it way better. But you mentioned Donna Wright. You mentioned kind of that Disney thing and the different, just all the little intricacies as to what makes one thing move this way and what makes this one move that way.
Right.
but yeah, we'll save that for another time.
Yeah, now with Disney, those concert specials they played like crazy on a loop. But the one boy
Yeah.
group from that period I felt was just one hit away from being really stars here in the States was Five. Because When the Lights Go Out was a moderate hit here, and then that the things you do was played heavily, but they slam dunk the funk. I believe the NBA had used that record for some of their stuff that they were doing at the time, but they just needed that one breakout record. And I heard Bye 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 was originally intended for them, but they ended up passing. And then it ended up going to NSYNC, and we all knew what happened after that.
Like I said, one thing goes this way, the other one goes this way. It's
Mm-hmm.
little moments, right? Little moments.
Yeah.
And another boy band Disney special, would I mean, they were all over these things, and because they were actually signed to Hollywood Records, it made a lot of sense. But Youngstown,
Oh yeah, I'll
they
be
were,
your everything off the Inspector Gadget soundtrack.
yeah, yeah. So those guys, a bunch of great guys. They actually played on the Hollywood Nights with us as well. In fact, DC, before we moved here to Alabama, DC was practically my neighbor. We were in Newport Beach. He was in Irvine. So we go golfing all the time. And we were always toying with putting together. Actually, we were talking about doing a little group with me, DC, and Corey Clark from American Idol.
Oh yeah.
We've gotten together a few times to
Mm.
talk about that. But yeah, it's crazy, man. Just like you said, these little moments, these little things, getting one Disney special or one Nickelodeon special or one
Mm.
song, right,
Mm.
can just change the whole trajectory of
Right.
a group, a career,
Right.
a life, right? So
Yeah,
it's yeah,
yeah. And you mentioned the All That and More tour that was with Nickelodeon. It was the All That stars on there, and you guys along with other
yeah.
musical acts on the bill. Was EYC on the bill with you all? Express Yourself Clearly.
EYC was on there. Absolutely. I remember EYC. What I'm not sure what they did after that tour, but I do
Yeah,
remember EYC. Yeah,
yeah, because I
absolutely.
remember they had the record Black Book. I don't think they were big in the States, but they were huge over in Europe because I think in the Black Book video, Nikki Duran, who was on Roundhouse back in the day on Nickelodeon, I think she was in the video. And one
Hmm.
of the members of the group, Damon, if you are a 90s kid, do you know about the Hanna-Barbera rapping and rhyming video? I wore that video out. He was in that video. Damon
Before
Butler before EYC. This
before the
was
group?
before EYC
Really?
because this
Wow.
was back in
Okay.
like 90, I believe, when that video came out. Because he was in that. Mickey Duran from Roundhouse was in that. And then a young, pre-famous Taj Mowry was one of the kids that was featured in the video. And then also one of the other kids that was in Rapping and Rhyming, Nikita Kalam, she was the voice of young Nala in the original Lion King, along with of course, JTT did the acting voice of Simba, but the
Mm.
singing voice of young Simba was Jason Weaver.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
But
so like,
you know your pop culture.
yeah, man, I try to, and I want to get your opinion on why you think the whole pop scene in Europe at that time, before it broke back stateside, was so successful. What do you think made groups like Take That, Westlife, Boyzone, E17 so special to where it kind of gave the US hope to say, hey, let's try to spin the block on pop again?
Um, I mean that's a tough question, but I I think that Europe is often ahead of the curve when it comes to a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll get them stateside, which is kind of ironic because I know a lot of the pop groups went there to break and then come back. So it sounds a little counterintuitive, but it really makes sense if you're thinking, okay, well, you've got this style here that you're emulating that's big there,
Mm-hmm.
that's not big here yet, right? Or with with for example, you mentioned Mari Starr. You think about what do you do with New Edition? Then you've got New Kids. Now it's only a matter of time before that comes around again. But during those moments where it's not the flavor of the month here,
Mm-hmm.
right? You got something else brewing in Europe, right? So now you see what's happening there, and you can have, and I think a lot of it too is you have, um, so the different cities in Europe, they've got. I'm sure they have their groups that have been touring there for a while. They're kind of used to that. So you bring this new pop group from the U.S. that's kind of a new fun toy to look at and dance to and listen to, but it's doing something familiar,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That might have been a factor too to
Yeah.
kind of build the hype on the U.S. groups as opposed to the kind of the domestic there,
Right. Right.
right? It's kind of the same thing here, right? You look at you've got pop groups here that in the past, I guess, decade or probably more at this point, um, you look at K-pop, J-pop.
Mm-hmm.
There are groups that have been doing this music, this type of music here for a long time, but that's not what's in right now. So now you've
Mm-hmm.
got this more exotic, non-domestic entity coming into play, and it's becoming, oh, this is interesting and new, but also familiar,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree because whenever I look at K-pop, J-pop with BTS, Twice, 17, they're pretty much just doing the same version of what all of y'all were doing, but on steroids.
Right. I mean, it's a really deep question you ask, and I'm not sure what the exact answer is, but those, I guess that would be my best guess
Right.
as to what the magic sauce would be there.
Right, right. Because when listening to a lot of those Europop groups, I'm more partial to E17 because they had more of the R&B flavoring as opposed to Take That, who was pretty much the British take on New Kids and went back for good was a hit here in the States. They were coming off of their run in Europe, then they ended up splitting. Of course, Robbie Williams ended up having a monster solo career, and his movie Better Man is getting ready to drop in a couple of weeks. And you mentioned Cut Father and Joe, you guys work with them. I first heard of them. They did a remix for the British R&B group Damage, Love to Love, which I thought was like
Okay.
really dope. Damage was another group I thought probably should have been bigger had they would have had this, that, and the third happen for them in the States. Then another group, boy group, who I felt got lost in the whole sauce in the teen pop scene was C Note. They were out of Transcon, but their
Yep.
different kind of love album, very dope album, very very
Mhm.
good group, and I felt they should have had more success than they should have. C Note.
Yeah, C Note actually this past year, I don't know if you're familiar with the boy band Stacy phenomenon. You, you know, have
Yeah.
you heard of boy band Stacy?
No.
Okay. It's this woman, and she's super smart and clearly super uh, charismatic. She was a fan of boy bands back in the day. Anyway, over the past few years, I guess one of her friends said started calling her boy band Stacy. So she took on this moniker as boy band Stacy, and she's just been on social media post. She's got video, with Donnie, right? Donnie Wahlberg. I mean, she's got all the boy bands, right? And they're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
here's boy band Stacy, here's boy band, and like boy band Stacy's like
Mm-hmm.
kind of a local or a boy band legend
Mm-hmm.
somehow over the past few years, and it's very interesting. But and she's been in touch with me too. We've been talking about this reunion coming up with No Authority, and she's kind of been really supportive there. But she helped C Note work on this reunion that they recently did. And so, you've got these guys who haven't done anything in ages, right? To get them back together, to get them, you know, show ready in shape to do a show. And so she was working with these guys to do their show, to put this show together. And over the past year, she got them out there and she got them playing these
Mhm.
shows, which is pretty amazing.
It was very,
Pretty
very
amazing.
dope, very dope. Now, when you think of boy bands, you think of the gold standard of boy groups, and you could probably
Mhm.
attest to this since you're in the boy band fraternity, New Edition and New Kids on the Block. Because when we look at the modern day boy band, the lineage come from
Mhm.
those two groups. So, in your
Yeah.
opinion, what is it about those two groups that really helped the modern day boy band become what it is today, and just overall the legacy where they're both touring, they're both legacy acts, both got stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And like I said, everybody, when you think of modern day boy groups, you tend to think of those two.
I mean, I think the reason you think about it is because they were the original. I mean, outside of obviously, Jackson Five or Beatles or but as far as what we view as boy bands, where we're just the four or five guys, or sometimes three, or sometimes two, I guess, right? The boy bands up there just singing and dancing, right? And it's funny that the moniker is boy bands because we're not up there playing instruments. We can play instruments, a lot of us, but we're not doing that. We're dancing and singing. So boy groups, I think, is probably the more accurate term. But these guys, I mean, at least for me, um, these are groups that I grew up listening to and loving, and the songs, outside of a handful of songs or parts of different songs, the songs are pretty easy to sing along to, right? And I think that's something that, um, along with telling a good story, having a song that the average fan can listen to and sing along with and enjoy,
Mhm.
is something that I feel kind of lately is missing a little bit because I mean, songs are getting shorter and shorter. They're not even telling whole stories. They're repeating the same things over and over. Just the other day, I heard somebody said, even Timberland was talking about how he posted a video talking about how a song should just be a chorus, a verse, and a chorus. I'm like, what? What kind of story you got? If you're telling a real story, you can't finish it in that short amount of time, right?
Mhm.
And if you're not telling a real story and your song's not that good, then maybe they only want to hear 30, 45 seconds. But that's a whole other conversation there. But if you look at these new edition, new kids, and moving forward in time with all the new groups that have come through, it's always very relatable, very singy songy, very pleasant, or danceable, right?
Mhm.
You think about the songs and the moments that they evoke, the emotions they evoke, and the memories they bring up when you
Mhm.
hear a song, right? It takes you back to a high school dance or a middle school or whatever it might be, right? Or a
Right.
time where you're on vacation somewhere, you're skydiving, or you're doing, and so for me, because they were in that time frame where I listened to them during my childhood and my formative years, they're very special to me. Now, for other people, I don't know. I would assume that they are kind of the quintessential boy band that you would think of.
Mhm.
But for me, that's the reason why, because they were so special to me and their music had so many special moments in my life.
Right, yeah, because I had the opportunity to see both New Edition and New Kids, and just the like you mentioned, it brings you back to moments in time and just
Mhm.
special. And you got to have the look, right timing, good songs. And with New Edition, when you think about what they did as a group and what they did as solo artists, and how they changed the face of not only R&B but pop in general. If it wasn't for Michael Bivins, no Boys to Men, no
Right.
Biv 10, none of that. And if you go back and if you look at what BBD's styling was with the boots, sneakers, mismatched clothes, and everything, and go back and look at the imaging of TLC when they first came out, that was clearly
Mhm.
influenced by BBD.
Yeah, I see that. And I had never thought about that particular example, but yeah, I can see that 100%.
Right. And I
You
think
know?
the one boy group, I think, at least in my opinion, for me, they were right up there with New Edition when I tell people all the time my favorite boy groups, New Edition's one, Troop for me is my number two. Cause
Okay.
Troop were no slouches. I tell you that could dance, sing their butts off. Steve Russell, all the stuff that he's done with Underdogs and solely as a songwriter. He wrote Gas to Be for B2K. He actually told me a fun story about that when I interviewed him back in the day. That I guess whoever was head of Sony was a
Mhm.
huge fan of Troop, and he told them, "Hey, I got this young group. I want a record that sounds similar to Troop." And he ended up writing "Gas to Be" for ended up turning out to be B2K, who they were huge. I mean, for some of y'all who don't know B2K, huge deal. I mean, those guys were the truth, and it was just a special time in pop music, in my opinion, with boy groups, even with Britney, Christina, Mandy Moore, Jessica Simpson, who, if you go back and listen to the first album, Sam Waters wrote and produced
Yep.
a lot of stuff
I
on
wanna
Jessica
love you
Simpson's album.
forever. Yeah.
And of
Oh yeah.
course,
And you
Sam.
can hear his vocals there too,
mm,
padding.
Yeah, wow. And of course, as we all know, Sam from Color Me Bad and Color Me Bad, I Want to
Mhm.
Sex You Up, that was huge. I Adore Me More, All for Love. And Sam did work on Anastasia, who was huge in Europe, but a lot of people in the States know her from the MTV show The Cut, because did a record on there called You're Not That Kind or something to that degree. But, it's kind of funny now looking and seeing people celebrate that time in music where it was lambasted on TV. I mean, MTV did Together, which was a spoof of a boy group, and they ended up doing doing kind of well actually. But now,
We played shows with them. I'm friends with a couple of the guys from there still. So
wow, yeah. So it's crazy to see how what was once looked at as "don't tell nobody I listen to boy bands" to now it's open, it's celebrated, and it's looked
yeah.
at as, man, you guys did something special.
Yeah. I mean, we had real quick. You were talking about Sam. So if you listen to Jessica Simpson's "I Want to Love You Forever," listen to that, and then immediately go and listen to Color Me Bad's uh, uh, "Remember When." Do you know that one, dude? Remember when I could see forever in your eyes. No,
Hmm.
no.
I think I remember that
Nope.
because was that on the Time and Chance album, or was it the album after Time and Chance?
I'm not 100% sure, but go listen to those those, listen to those back to back, and
Mm,
listen to the backgrounds. And
mm,
obviously, you've got Brian with his airy vocals and everything.
mm.
But listen to the chords, listen to the bass swipes, listen to those songs. ABM, it's pretty interesting.
Right,
Um,
right, right. So
just
go ahead.
writers, producers, and people that influence each other. Like you said, you hear something you love, whether you know it or not. At some point later on, you might actually
Mm,
reiterate it
right,
unknowingly
right,
somehow.
right. And you mentioned Boyz II Men earlier, how you were digging Boyz II Men.
Yeah.
Were you more Cooley High Harmony or two?
Um, I guess Cooley High Harmony early on, but I think two vocally for me
Mm,
was more of it. So when I was growing up, I had a buddy of mine, Raymond. He and I used to always dance, and I think we danced to more of the stuff from Cooley High Harmony, like little dance routines we put
mm,
together. But
mm,
as a vocalist, two
mm,
is definitely more my speed.
mm.
I think.
Right. Right. I'm more
Yeah.
of a Cooley Eye Harmony fan because I looked at it as Cooley Eye Harmony for me was like Boyz II Men's Off the Wall, while two was their Thriller, and it started with End of the Road with it being on Boomerang. And if you look at the This Is Pop documentary that was on
Mm.
Netflix, Michael Bivins told a story about how he had to trick Gerald Busby, the late Gerald Busby, who was over at Motown, into liking End of the Road and it was where I guess the guys wanted to get away from not being more known as balladeers, but Mike knew
Mm.
that record was going to be a smash record, and of course it was right, and it ended up leading to Cooley Eye Harmony getting repressed to where you the repressing is the one where they're on the album cover with the Sixers hats, and they just really took off after that. But I'm more of a Cool Air Harmony fan because I feel like that was the very essence, the authenticity of them. And of course, it was produced by a young Dallas Austin. And if it wasn't
Mm.
for Joyce Cinderella Irby from Climax, we wouldn't have heard of Dallas Austin, Sammy, or Lloyd, because Lloyd was in a group called In Tune, and that Lloyd was in that. Sammy, she discovered him while watching him perform on Showtime at Apollo, and with Dallas, he did "Hey Mr. DJ" for her with Dougie Fresh on her album, and then did two cuts off of Troop's Attitude album, "My Music" and "I'll Always Love You." And I don't know if you know this about the Troop's Attitude album, but Trent Reznor, pre Nine Inch Nails, was the engineer on that album.
I did not know that. No,
Yeah, yeah, he was. Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah, but I want to close out on this. We're definitely going to do a part two. Current
Yeah.
projects that you got coming down the pipe.
Okay. Well, we are currently working on our set list for No Authority. We don't have any dates booked yet. We're looking at potentially hopping on some of the Pop 2K dates in 2025. But we're also looking at potentially just putting together our own show and having some friends of ours from LA and other places come in and be a part of that show with us. But yeah, we're putting together the set list right now. In fact, we're about to start working on the TV tracks for it because, as you know, when you're with a label, they take care of everything. So now we have to go and kind of create these things on our own. But we're excited. Everybody's on board finally. All four members are on board. So we're stoked about that. And we're really looking forward to doing this. I know we talked about uh, our buddy Sean from As Yet, and he's always been very supportive. I was a huge fan growing up, and uh, met him early on when I moved to LA. In fact, he came to Stevie B's studio to work on some stuff at one point. We became friends, and he called me up. We talked, I don't know, a few months ago after the No Authority read and stuff started happening, and it was really touching. He said to me, he said, Tommy, I know there's no way that As Yet is going to get back together, so I'm going to have to live this through you. Which coming from someone that you've grown up admiring and I don't want to say idolizing, but like a
Yeah.
hero you look up to, kind of giving you flowers like that is really really touching. It really means a
Mhm.
lot. So um, shout out to Sean, love you, brother. We do have, like I said, the show in the works, potentially some new music. We'll see how these first few shows go. If people are loving it, hey, we're loving it. Why not keep on, making it work? So we're excited about that. And also, I don't know if you see this right here. We got the Bad Boys of Pop. It's a podcast. Eric and I did a lot, especially during the pandemic. We've done a couple of podcasts. This was our second podcast. The first one was called The Real Showcast. And if you're interested, I don't know if you've seen it, The Real Showcast. We It was a 4 camera shoot, really amazing, um, uh, just visually, and we had some amazing guests, and they really opened up to us. In fact, almost half of them cried, which wasn't our intention to have them cry, but they were so open, sharing their stories and just being honest about things they had been through with
Mhm.
their experience in the business. The Real Showcast, but the Bad Boys of Pop is a little more tongue in cheek, a little more kind of a fun uh, interview show where we have our friends in the business come
Right.
on and we do some trivia and some fun stuff with them.
Right.
So the Bad Boys of Pop is a podcast that we haven't done in a couple of years now, but I'm sure that we're going to start doing that again soon as we get this year started. So definitely very excited, and it's been a pleasure, Jarrell, to be on with you. I appreciate you asking me to come on, and I know the guys will look forward to hopping on here
For
with you
sure.
as well, and talking about some more.
For
some more
sure.
stuff, and hopefully we'll have some more to say at that point
For
as well.
sure. For sure. And one thing I really want to ask before we jet.
Mhm. Sure.
Knowing what you know now, being in the
Mhm.
industry at a young age, do you think that there should be more safeguards in place to protect kids when going into the business? Because we hear about the horror stories of getting taken advantage of managerial wise, as far as
Mhm.
money, and then the whole mental health aspect. Because when you're in that type of fishbowl like that, I can see
Yeah.
how it could kind of be a drain when you got girls screaming every night and I can't find my peace. Do you think more needs to be done and as a whole in the industry to protect young kids that really want to get into the business? Because we see the glitz and glam and the fame, but don't really
Mhm.
see the behind closed doors after the photo shoots, the concerts, the meet and greets.
You know, the answer is yes. But the question is, what do you do? Right. And I think maybe awareness is kind of the most obvious answer is people being honest and telling their stories. And I think things like, you know, Justin coming out and, you know, the song where he's singing and bearing his soul, which takes on kind of a whole new meaning now in the light of what's going on. But, you know, he not Timberlake,
Yeah,
Bieber,
yeah.
right? Coming out and you know what song I'm talking about. He's coming
Hmm.
out, he's singing. Um, and you can see how much he feels that. Not that when he performs other stuff, he's not emoting as well, but you could
Right,
this just seems a little more real,
right.
right?
Hmm.
And the lyrics, you know, talking about how you've got everything, but you're so alone and there's no one to talk to. And so I think providing awareness that, hey, look, this is a very real um, potential outcome is that you're going to have no one to really confide in. Uh, like I kind of alluded to earlier, when all you have is yes men, yes people, everything's yes, 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 and no one's telling you no, it's hard to regulate yourself as a child when your brain hasn't even fully developed, right? You're not even an adult. So how can you be who you are when you don't know who you are yet? So
Right.
you need a little more guidance. I think having kind of maybe some more guide rails, some more guidelines in place would be good. But back to just awareness and knowing, hey, you know, not everything that shines is going to be gold. Not everything is great. So just go into it with a team, hopefully a team that you believe in, that believes in you, that's going to tell you no when you have to be told no, and not just support every single whim and everything you want to do.
Hmm. And be honest when you fill out those profiles for those websites, because I know some of those members used to probably BS on those. Be like, favorite color, I'm gonna say blue today. Favorite sweater, cashmere. Favorite food, I'm gonna go seafood today. Romantic date, long walk on the beach. Favorite athlete, so and so. Now be honest, Tom? Did you when you filled out those profiles? Did you BS a lot of those, or was it where I'm just gonna stick with my usual?
I mean, it's been a while, but I want to say, I mean, I try. I was obviously, if you're filling something out by hand,
Hmm.
it's a little more like schoolwork.
Hmm.
So you're just trying to get through it, right? But you know, in interviews, it's kind of a different story. But you know, I feel like my favorite colors have always been, you know, blue or green or some sort of combination,
Hmm.
blue green. Uh, you know, I don't really care much about zodiac per se. I am a
Hmm.
Pisces. I never lied about that. They did make me take a year off of my age so that we'd all be teens when the album came out.
Hmm.
Um, saying I was born in 1980, I was born in 79,
Hmm.
but and by the time the album came out, we weren't all teens anyway. So it was just like, it was a weird, because they took so long to get it out. Anyway, it was always weird when people were like, "Oh, in Vegas on my 21st," they're like, "Oh, well, you're gonna have fun next year." I'm like, "No, I'm gonna have fun this year. I'm 21. You think I'm 20?"
Right.
But I think I mean, we tried to be as honest as we could, right? With
Right.
his I mean, when you're 18, 19, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old,
Mhm.
um, like I said, how well do you really know yourself? You're just kind of
Right.
every day you might have a new favorite food depending on what you've tried, right? You
Uh-huh.
may not even know you may not even tried
Right.
a certain type of food at that age, right? So you
Hmm.
know, but yeah, I mean, I don't think we ever tried to be dishonest in those. We were
Right.
trying to, you know,
Right. Yeah.
softball questions, right? What do you do?
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's standard rules for those that don't know for being in a
Yeah,
boy group. No girlfriends.
yeah,
No
single,
alcohol.
always single,
Always single. Be available. Keep the
always,
fantasy going. No alcohol.
always.
No
Yeah,
alky. No alcohol. No facial hair.
yeah,
First sign of facial hair,
right,
you're getting some razors to shave.
right, right.
You want to always look bright, look colorful, wear colors. Because I
Mhm.
didn't know this until I saw the boy band con doc that Lance put out a couple years ago when they were talking about Backstreet and NSYNC. How NSYNC
Mm,
always wore bright colors, while Backstreet always
mm,
wore dark colors. And I didn't pay attention to that until the doc because Backstreet Boys appeal to more older, while NSYNC younger, brighter,
mm.
hipper, fresher. So you want to wear bright colors, and you always want to do your poses, whereas finger point like this, or the
Played that,
heart, and I
right.
love
And
you, member's name
lately
here, and the heart.
those, and oh
Yeah,
yeah,
so
that's a new one.
I don't know if
Um,
you saw the
the
movie Turning Red. Have you seen Turning Red? That Disney
no,
Pixar movie that came out some years ago. So
oh
Billie Eilish and her brother
no,
Phineas wrote records
yeah,
on it, but it was like a fictional boy group in the movie. And I was listening to those records. I'm like, they studied and paid attention to that era of pop. That just goes to show you how deep of an influence that era of pop music was. And how, like I mentioned earlier, it's looked at in reverence now to where when I was leaving the Backstreet Boys show, two drunk guys led a chant of "I Want It That Way."
yeah, yeah. No shame. There's no shame.
There's no shame. That's probably the only
No shame.
Backstreet Boys song that people know. People like Backstreet's back too, because of the
Yeah,
dancing. But like I said, I'm just
yeah.
glad that that music of late '90s, early 2000s is celebrated. It's loved. It's not looked at as shame, and it's definitely popular. So, any shout outs you want to give Tommy before we wrap?
Just want to shout out. Well, I want to shout out you for having me on. I appreciate you, Jarrell, and I want to shout out uh, Eric, Ricky, Danny. Boys, let's do this. Shout out to Josh. Actually, he's a good dude. People always thought that he and I didn't get along. We're good. We're not enemies. We're friends. And he's an amazing singer and voiceover artist. If you haven't checked out what he's up to, he's doing a lot of cool voiceover stuff. But I'm very excited to get this No Authority 2025 thing going. We're doing the hashtag NA 2025. I want to shout out my mom, my family, my wife, um, and everybody that's stuck around this long waiting on us to come back. We're excited to be back. We're excited to see you in person. Excited to get up there on stage. A little nervous to see how much stamina we've got. At this point, we might need to get a little more cardio going. I don't know, but we're looking forward to getting back up there and having a lot of fun. And pelvic thrusts. That's what it's all about.
It's all about the pelvic
Nope.
thrust and the hand movements. And you can
Pelvic.
catch this interview wherever you stream podcasts and on the official YouTube channel at youtube.com/beyond the album cover. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a thank you, a round of applause for Tommy McCarthy, for No Authority, for coming on to the podcast. Tommy, thank you, bro.
Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.